Alright, this is video 2 for AP European on April 7th. Okay, Spain now. We just left Russia, now going to Spain. Before he ascended to the throne of Spain, Charles III was the well-regarded king of Naples. Having studied the essays of Benito Frigeaux, Spain's foremost enlightened thinker, Charles embarked to bring about reforms that echoed Frigeaux's challenges to more orthodox teachings of the Catholic Church. One of Charles's first standoffs with the Church came in 1735 when Pope Clement XII refused to recognize Charles's legitimacy as king of Naples. Naples was seen by the Church as just another region under the control of papal states. Accordingly, the Church considered the Pope the one and only authority in this kingdom. When Pope Clement died and was replaced by Pope Benedict XIV in 1740, Charles seized the opportunity to assert his firm belief the Church should hold no special authority in his kingdom. Benito Frigeaux's writing that rejected the harsh orthodoxy of the Church came into practice as Charles negotiated a concordat with Pope Benedict to tax church officials and hold them under equal under the law. In 1759, Charles III ascended to the Spanish throne following the deaths of his brother. Charles was determined to continue his Enlightenment reforms, which included laws from banning bullfighting to protecting free trade to developing roads and canals. In Spain, Charles continued his goal of eliminating the Church's power in the sovereign state. He was able to decrease the number of clergy who many Spanish felt were not contributing adequately to society. At the same time, due to the respect garnered by the Spanish Enlightenment philosophers, the Inquisition was increasingly viewed largely as an antiquated mission. Poland. The story of Poland in the 18th century consists of the complete eradication of the nation that had previously played a central role in the affairs of Central Europe. The traditional starting date for the history of Poland is 966, when Prince Mieczysko who was to be the founder of the dynasty Piast that would rule Poland for 4 centuries, accepted Roman Catholicism, firmly tying Poland to the culture of Western Europe. For almost to the attacks due to the lack of natural borders, the Poles in the Middle Ages had to deal with threats from the Mongols from the east as well as the Teutonic Knights from the west. In order to deal with the threat from the Crusading Order, a new dynasty was established in 1385 through uniting Poland with Lithuania. When the Lithuanian Grand Duke Jagiełło, the ruler of the last pagan state in Europe, married the Polish queen Jadwiga. This newly created Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth met its initial goal of defeating the Teutonic Knights by securing an important victory at the Battle of Grunwald. The fatal flaw for the Polish-Lithuanian state was the failure to create a strong centralized government in the face of a recalcitrant nobility that feared the loss of authority. By the end of the 16th century, the nobles had greatly weakened the crown by making an elective position and often seeking foreign princes to further ensure it would remain a weak title. This policy became increasingly dangerous in the 17th century as new threats appeared from the Swedes and the Russians. The Polish-Lithuanian state still remained a significant player in Europe up until the end of the century, when King John Sobieski played a critical role in driving the Turks from the gates of Vienna in 1683. But by the middle of the 18th century, Poland was so weak that it maintained its independence only by the good graces of Russia. Poland's luck ran out, however, and eventually resulted in the loss of a great deal of land. When Poniatowski became the king in 1764, he displayed an independent streak that Catherine the Great did not expect from her former lover. This did not bode well for Poniatowski's attempt to move the nation's political system in a more centralized direction, an attempt that was met with displeasure by all Poland's neighbors. In 1772, Russia, Prussia, and Austria forced Poland to accept a partition that cost Poland 30% of its territory. In some ways, this first partition provided the nudge for Poland to finally get its political house in order. Influenced by the ideas of the Enlightenment in 1791, the Polish-Lithuanian Parliament produced Europe's first written constitution. The constitution, which was never fully implemented, although it remained a beacon for later generations of Polish reformers, angered many nobles who saw their influence reduced, as well as Poland's neighbors who feared a national revival. The anti-Poniatowski's nobles applied to the Russians for assistance, and Catherine, with the aid of Prussia, was more than willing to intercede. Russia and Prussia insisted on the removal of the Constitution and also carried out the Second Partition in 1793. This led to the loss of vast lands in the eastern territory of the nation and reduced Poland to a rump state. In a heroic last-ditch effort to retain statehood, a Polish revolt broke out in 1794 under the military leadership of Tadeusz Kościuszko, who had fought with distinction in the American Revolution. Overwhelmed by more powerful enemies, Poniatowski was forced to abdicate, and the third and final partition took place in 1795, wiping Poland off the map. Despite the best hopes of Polish nationalists throughout the 19th century, independent Poland would not be revived until after World War I took place. Okay, Great Britain. After the turmoil of the 17th century, Great Britain became the most stable nation in Europe in the 18th century. The triumph of Parliament and the struggle against Stuart absolutism put Great Britain in a position of political stability that would provide one of the critical foundations for the establishment of a vast overseas empire, as well as the industrial transformation that would largely begin in the middle of the century. With the death of Queen Anne in 1714, the throne passed to George I, the ruler of the German state of Hanover, whose sole qualification was that he was a Protestant cousin of the late Queen. Like his son George II, he was far happier spending time in Hanover, where he could reign as an unquestioned absolutist, rather than having to deal with the independent-minded British Parliament. While there is a historical debate over the strength of the support within Great Britain for the Stuart cause, the 18th century did experience two pro-Stuart revolts in 1715 and 1745, the latter one famous for the involvement of Bonnie Prince Charlie, who saw his dream of being restored to the throne dashed in the Battle of Culloden in 1746. While it's clear that after 1688 the House of Parliament would dominate political life in the country, how that power was to be utilized in an efficient manner remained one of the significant questions in the early part of the 18th century. The most significant development in this regard was the evolution of the office of Prime Minister, which was not officially recognized until 1905, became a political reality in all but name during Robert Walpole's tenure as Chancellor of Exchequer from 1724 to 1741. The fact that both George I and II were less than attentive to British domestic politics meant that Walpole had a free hand to mold this political system to his advantage. Walpole used a complex system of political patronage to maintain his control over the House of Commons. This support in the lower house became the vital component for ministerial power, and when Walpole lost that support in 1741 over a conflict over the direction of British foreign policy, he resigned his post as Chancellor of Exchequer, even though he still enjoyed the support of George II. Another development that shaped British politics in the 18th century was the formation of two parliamentary blocs, Tories and Whigs. While Tories stood for the prerogative rights of the monarch and support of the Church of England, the Whigs were more closely allied to the spirit of the Revolution of 1688 and the idea of religious tolerance. When George III came to the throne in 1760, he claimed that he wanted the throne to rise above party strife, though Edmund Burke, in his thoughts on the cause of present discontent, argued that parties were essential to the parliamentary government and were a fundamental component of the political stability. George III's desire to choose his own chief minister during the first 10 years of his reign remained problematic until Lord North assumed the mantle of chief minister in 1770 and held a position for the next 12 years. We'll stop there with that. Let's go to the concepts real quick. So we're in section 4, unit 4. We're looking at enlightenment and other approaches to power, 4.6. In the 18th century, a number of states in the Eastern and Central Europe experimented with enlightenment and absolutism. By 1800, most governments in the West and Central Europe had extended toleration to Christian minorities and in some states civil equality to Jews. As a result of the Holy Roman Empire's limitation of sovereignty in the Peace of Westphalia, Prussia rose to power, and the Habsburgs, centered in Austria, shifted their empire eastward. That's probably it. Now, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, we'll cover the rest later on if we need to as a wrap up for period 2, but that's it for